What is up, guys? Taiki here, and today I'd like to go over the Grim Finance exploit because yes, I was negatively affected by this, or I mean, in other words, I lost everything. I lost it all, right? And it's all gone. And this obviously has to do with a TUM FTM LP. I was auto compounding it on Grim, roughly like 1200% APY. And generally, I don't really use auto compounders, but I chose to use Grim, and I'll go over the reasons why later in the video. But I did lose a sizable amount of money, right? Let's just say that the USD value was over $50,000. So I'll let you guys do your little imagination of how much that is. But it was definitely a hit, right? And I mean, I'm not like that upset about the money, right? Because I know I'll make it back, right? It was a risk managed position, and like the other parts of my portfolio is carrying me through this downturn, like namely Luna and Jewel. So the money itself is like whatever. And if you told me that at the beginning of the year that I would lose like this much money and I'd be okay with it, I would have slapped you in the face, right? But this year has been great for me, and I guess with DeFi comes like risk, right? And for me, this is actually the first time I've ever lost money on a hard rug or an exploit, right? I've never gone hard rugged, and this is the first time I was exploited, or I put my money into something that was exploited. And I really do try to do all the due diligence whenever I do talk about farms on the channel, right? Projects, whatever. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job, but obviously this was the first time that maybe some of you guys were negatively affected, and I'm like really sorry for anyone that like lost money doing this. That hurts me a lot more than the money, right? Because money is whatever, but like, to see other people hurt, definitely not a great feeling. And what's more frustrating about the Grim Finance, I guess the exploit was that it was completely avoidable, right? And this has nothing to do with like the fundamentals and the thesis behind TUM FTM LP. Obviously when this first happened, like everyone just sold, right? Or maybe it was the hacker that sold everything, and it bounced immediately back because Harry here just this is the entire thesis, right? Like if something goes bad, Harry is gonna bring out his checkbook and just write a check and just like start buying T-bonds and TUM and whatnot, and it has rebounded. And so the TUM thesis is still intact, but I just lost everything just because I took on the additional smart contract risk, the additional layer of smart contract risk using an auto compounder. And I did think that it was safe. Like TUM promoted it, right? They have a partnership with TUM, and I asked the community, the Phantom community, right? I'm relatively well connected in the Phantom community about like the safety of Grim, and the general consensus was that they're a good team and whatever. But obviously it doesn't really matter, right? Just because they had an audit and whatever, but obviously like something slipped through the cracks, and I feel like I feel like audits are good to have. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? Because I mean, these auditing firms, they take on like so many clients every single day. So obviously they're not going to do a great job at capturing every single potential exploit. And there's like a moral hazard aspect when it comes to auditing firms, where like the best auditing firms, they're oversubscribed until like mid 2022. So the only auditing firms available are like the mid to low tier auditing firms that's going to just take on a bunch of clients and just try to crank out that cash flow. And maybe this is one of those instances. And let me just go over this post by Harry. Yeah, this is on the TUM Finance Discord, and this is a little bit of hopium, and they said that we are thinking, right? Like they're thinking about it. They're not actually doing anything, right? They just said that they're thinking of ways to make users whole or partially compensated, not because we have to, but because we want to. However, to overpromise and underdeliver now wouldn't be fair to the community, which makes sense, right? Like overpromising is never a great thing, especially when you're a public figure. There's no insurance fund, right, for TUM or Phantom, but he's just gonna set it up, right, for then for the next time this happens, maybe he's gonna have this insurance fund to help, I guess, compensate people. I don't know what they're gonna do now, right? And he mentioned that this is gonna be craft a solution in the short term, which he mentions will be in 1 to 2 months. So who knows, right? I mean, like I don't really expect anything, right? Like I don't really blame Harry or TUM, right? The only person I have to blame is myself, because I was the one clicking buttons. And I took on the additional smart contract risks, like I mentioned earlier. So let's just go over the lessons learned for me specifically, and yeah, let's get right into it. So the first lesson, this is obvious, it's to always avoid as many additional smart contract risks as possible, right? And audits, obviously, I think they had an audit from like Solidity Finance, and like they have they like audit everything, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's risk free. If anyone has been in DeFi for a long time, like we know that audits don't really mean anything, right? But I would rather like put money in a project that's audited than something that's not audited, assuming that I know nothing about devs. And, some auditing firms are better than others, and maybe this is a warning flag that, hey, like Solidity Finance, maybe their audits don't really mean much because maybe they just like take on a bunch of clients and they're just more in the cash flow business. And I know nothing about the Solidity Finance team, right? So I don't say anything negative, but it's just don't assume that audits equal safe, right? Because nothing in crypto is 100% safe, unfortunately. But with high risk comes high rewards, and this was one of those instances where the risk side, the risk aspect got the best of me. And the second lesson I learned is to just try to avoid using auto compounders from here on out. And maybe like BP Finance is like the only one that stood the test of time. And maybe I don't want to promote any auto compounders, to be honest. But auto compounders is just like a convenience tool, right? Because all of us can just auto compound it like just manually, right? Every day, every other day, every week or something. It's just that it's nice to use an auto compounder like if you're a busy person and you don't really want to worry about it, right? And to touch back on what I mentioned earlier, the reason I actually used auto compounders this time was just because we were like near the end of the year. And it's more tax advantageous to use an auto compounder for various reasons. Because, let's say I was in a TUM FTM LP and I was claiming my T-shares every day, splitting it into FTM TUM and redepositing it. Well, when I claim my T-shares, that counts as income. But if I let an auto compounder do all the work for me, then all I have to do, like to calculate a taxable event, right, whether it's a profit or loss, is say how much money did I put in, and then how much money did I take out, right? And I don't really take on taxable events in the month of December, and I just use Grim just because, okay, like I don't want to incur any taxable events. I'm already going to pay a lot in taxes, so just try to let it sit in auto compounder and like withdraw at a profit or a loss in January or something. And obviously, I can write this off as a taxable loss, I guess. So I get to pay a lot less taxes. I still have to pay taxes. I don't want to worry about that right now, but I still have to pay taxes and whatnot. But maybe that's maybe that's a good way to think about it from a more optimistic mindset. And lastly, DeFi is the Wild West, right? I mean, no matter how much we research, we can never be completely sure. Right. If you're worried, just opt for battle tested applications. Obviously those applications aren't going to give the highest returns, right? But they're, but like returns are correlated to the risk taking, right? Like high returns comes with high risk and lower returns come with low risk. And in DeFi, low returns means like what, like 10%, right? On like stable coins or like, stable like assets like AVAX and Luna and whatnot. But, it's, just always have at the back of your mind that, can I like actually lose this money, right, in an unfortunate event like an exploit or a rug, and be okay with it. And I always talk about this, right, like risk management, right? Bet sizing should always be inversely correlated with the risk taken. So if something is high risk, you don't have to bet that big, right? And you can always add more later. And if something's high risk to begin with, then you already have the asymmetric upside where you don't have to bet big early on to capture like great rewards. For example, like DeFi Kingdoms, like I wish I bet more. I bet really little, but now like that position is large. But something that's like lower risk, like Bitcoin or Ether, just like holding those assets, maybe you can bet more like, of your portfolio in those assets, because it's just low risk, right? And, if you believe that, crypto is here to stay for the macro duration for like, for the next decade, for the next few decades and onwards, then, we really don't have to just YOLO our net worth into like random, random applications and try to like make it, right? I tried to preach the humble farmer mindset, and maybe it didn't work out this time. But that's kind of how I manage my positions. And even though my TUM finance thesis it's still intact, right? It's still like holding the peg and whatnot. And the reason I entered was because I believed in the peg, and I felt good about it. But I didn't really bet that big just because I knew it was high risk, and I mentioned that in my initial video for TUM finance. So I think those three lessons, I think I'll take with me. Just avoiding additional smart contract risk, right? Like as much as possible. I think that's important. What was the second one? Yeah, and like auto compounders. I don't want to talk down on auto compounders, but you gotta know, like, is it worth the risk, right? If we can do it manually, it's a chore, right? But I think just like clicking like buttons like many times a day, in addition to like whatever I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, it's probably like, worth it, right? Like the chore is probably worth it. And just I guess the saying is always only risk an amount that you're willing to lose. And it was funny because this weekend I was in Tahoe just like snowboarding with like my closest friends that I haven't seen in years actually. And like I was in physical discomfort all the time because this was my first time essentially. But little did I know, right? Not only was I in for physical pain, I was in for financial pain from great finance as well. It's funny. And definitely, like I mentioned in the first video, I'm not going to sell my position until the 31st of December. And that still stands because I lost it all. Yeah, so jokes aside, I'm really sorry if this negatively affected everyone. I did do the research, but I guess the exploit in the grim finance slipped through the cracks. And if it makes anyone feel better, like I lost a lot of money as well. So hopefully this doesn't mean I'm going to stop farming, right? I think farming still has like amazing risk reward, risk adjusted returns in like all of crypto, all of finance, all of like I guess life, right? As long as you're being humble and like not taking on too much risk. So I'm still in my farms. I'm not going to stop farming, right? This is just a bump in the road, and I'm just going to take it with stride. I'm not bearish Tomb. I'm not bearish Phantom. I don't really blame anyone, right? I think the valuable lesson is like, it's you have to be okay with this kind of stuff in crypto, right? Because it does happen, right? And I don't blame anyone, right? The only person to blame is me because I was the one that clicked approve and clicked deposit and just let it sit there. So I think Harry and Tomb and like Phantom, I think that community is getting a lot of hate. I think that's unjustified. It's just crypto, right? I mean, just crypto. I mean, there's exploits, there's rugs all the time. And the best we can do as farmers is to do the research and try to avoid hard rugs, right? By just, I guess, auditing the developers and their intentions, and then the smart contract aspect. I guess it's impossible to know, right? Because developers are human and humans make mistakes. So the only applications that we can actually save, like completely safe, I guess, is the ones that's been around for years, that has billions of dollars locked. But it is what it is. So I don't know how to end this video. I'm gonna upload 2 videos today, right? I'm just gonna make this video just for this topic in particular, and I'll still release a video talking about I guess the more positive sides of crypto, right? So 2 videos today, and hopefully you guys enjoy them. And I'm like, once again, I'm really sorry for anyone negatively affected. It was not my intention. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and be safe farming out there.